this is my grandpa, and I'm interviewing him on the Cuban Missile Crisis. So how old were you when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened?
Uh, it's hard to remember, but I was very young, junior high age.
And do you remember what they were doing at this time when you first heard?
What I was doing
Yeah.
at this time? Oh, I was pretty normal, going to school and playing baseball, the rest of it. So it was I was pretty oblivious to really what was going on. So
And then did you have to do any drills while you were in school, and like if so, how often?
yeah, actually the drills were prior to that, like when I was in elementary school, and it was considered a Cold War historically. And yeah, we had to get under the desk, and we had, nuclear bomb drills. So yeah, it was real in that sense. But I didn't understand, the magnitude. It wasn't. It was just like a fire drill or something that you would have then.
Hmm. Did you ever have to actually take cover in part of the missile crisis?
No, no, it was pretty. It was a pretty high level government thing, but there was a lot of activity and a lot of headlines. Everybody knew about it. There was an awful lot of talk about it. So yeah, it was a real thing. It was a
Hmm.
real thing.
And how did it affect like your regular school day?
Well, during the crisis, I was in, I guess either junior high or I might have been a sophomore, I think, at that time. But I was aware President Kennedy was an excellent president, and everybody who was young liked Kennedy. He was very popular. So I think we had a lot of confidence in him at the time. So.
Hmm. And what was your first reaction? in the-
Oh, again, I didn't. Looking back, I can have more of a reaction than at the time. At the time, I just thought everything was going to be just fine, and I didn't really understand the magnitude of everything.
Yeah.
But I'm sure my parents did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you remember anything that the government said or did like before or during the crisis?
It was a different climate back then. The press was not as I don't know, transparent as it is now. It seems like they're very critical now of everything. But back then, the press was kind of sugar coated everything. So it was we were more optimistic back then, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then do you think they like should have done something more, or like something they should have been able to do?
I'm certainly, if you talk to a millennial or young people today, and they look back at that would be their reaction.
Hmm.
For me, it was just very typical at the time. So
Do you think there was something that the government could have done?
no, the government was actually the way it played out. Kennedy was very firm. They were intent on, and not having that threat close to the shore.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's always easier to look back at history, but he was absolutely right in the way he acted.
Hmm.
So thankfully, Khrushchev backed down, and everything went well. So,
And do you remember like your parents' reaction on the event?
no, we didn't talk about stuff like.
Yeah, because there was like
parents
a lot
do.
of stories of the parents if they talked about it in front of you or not.
Yeah, parents kind of sheltered you back then. Now I think parents are more are better. Yeah.
And like, how was it living through like an event like this, and like how it changed through history?
That's a good question. I don't think that event. I think looking back now, it has more of an impact on me today, particularly in view of the North Korean situation that we all face today still. So really, the situation has not resolved itself. we're still living with nuclear threats, but at the time, like I said, it didn't have the impact on me. What did have an impact on me, a profound impact on me, was the assassination of President Kennedy shortly after that,
Mm-hmm.
and that I remember as being a real impact. I can remember exactly where I was when I heard about it. I can, it was really, everybody was so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Much like the way when Roosevelt died, during World War II, the whole country was in shock.
Right.
It was the same kind of impact when JFK died.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, good questions, Katie Rose.
Do you think there's anything that we can learn from it today, and how, be connected?
Yeah, I think it's a great lesson. I think it's great you're studying it. Congratulations to your teacher and your class. And to look at history, so you're not doomed to repeat it is, kind of the classic answer. But the situation then is so similar to the situation now, and I hope everything works out in the next few
Mm-hmm.
days, weeks, months to the same way, because it's a threat. If that nuclear capability falls into the wrong hands, it could be catastrophic. And I know even the Pope commented on it yesterday, or maybe today,
Mm-hmm.
even earlier. So it's a serious situation. So the more you know about it, the better you can react.
And then how has this changed you in any way, or you today from that point?
Oh, I don't know. You look back at history, at least recent history, and you can be so thankful for that generation and for the things that they did in the world. We weren't perfect by any means as a country or a people, but it was a good time for America.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you think that there was anything in this that influenced other historical events that would it trigger?
That's a good question. That is a good question. I'm sure it impacted in ways that we probably didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we were thankfully the strongest nation in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and we're democratic and we're free and we're fair in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Kennedy's actions that day or at that time really set a precedence.
Right.
That's an excellent question, and probably the sum of your report. I mean, the essence of your report. So.
What did everybody initially think was going to happen? Right when they were caught with the shock of it,
Yeah, it was it was delicate because they were actually moving troops. There were plans drawn up militarily. We didn't know that at the time, but they were going to invade Cuba. They were going to do away, neutralize that threat one way or the other. So it was a serious deal. There were hundreds of thousands of troops moving. I mean, they were really ready to do whatever was necessary, whatever the president ordered.
right?
So hopefully, we can, the same kind of things going on with North Korea. So it's it's a very relevant study for you.
And then, at this point, did people think it was going to last longer than it did? Or, the time period, did the span of it?
That's a good question, too. I don't think anybody really knew.
Yeah.
But I think the president's actions were very decisive so that it wasn't protracted. For example, the last 8 years, not to criticize Obama, but he just swept it under the rug. The thing with North Korea, and didn't take any decisive action.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think now we've reached the point with North Korea that something has to be resolved, and hopefully they can do that with the help of China and other people in the area. So all good questions. Katie, I think you should get an A. Yeah. This is excellent.
So do you think that the proper things were done to prevent something else from happening today and like after that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was a time when America stood tall. Yeah, I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, I do. I think that's something that we can be proud of. And there were a number of things, you know, there were a number of things
Mhm.
that we can be proud of. A lot of things we can, you know, wish we'd have done better, but this is certainly one of them.
And then like, is there anything that like stands out to you most in that, or
At that time,
yeah?
like I said, no, not really about the Cuban crisis because like I said, they sheltered us, and you know, I was a flaky teenager, so you know, it kind of went over my head, you know, quite honestly at the time. Now looking back, it's really interesting.
Well, that's it. Thanks for letting me.
Perfect, Katie.